Max Verstappen isn't just winning races anymore, he's changing the physics of Formula One in ways rivals still don't fully understand. And the most dangerous part? The advantage everyone is chasing might not even be visible on telemetry. That matters right now, because as the grid prepares for a regulation reset and new power shifts across teams, the single biggest question in Formula One isn't who has the fastest car, it's whether anyone can actually drive the way Verstappen does. And here's the curiosity nobody can ignore. If his style is the real weapon, what happens when the rules try to take it away? Because the overlooked truth most fans missed is this: domination in F1 rarely comes from speed alone. It comes from a driver solving problems others don't even see. And within the next 90 seconds, you'll understand why engineers quietly admit Verstappen is forcing the entire sport to rethink what perfect driving even means. His corner entry alone breaks assumptions that shaped modern Formula One. Most elite drivers balance aggression with tyre preservation, accepting tiny compromises to survive a race distance. Verstappen doesn't. He attacks the braking phase with microscopic precision, rotating the car earlier, carrying impossible mid-corner speed, and somehow still protecting rear traction on exit. That shouldn't work. Yet it does. Again and again. Let that sink in. Because when a driver bends the limit without crossing it, rivals aren't just slower, they're psychologically trapped. And psychology wins championships long before lap time does. Data from recent dominant seasons shows something unsettling. Verstappen's advantage often appears not in straight-line speed or raw qualifying gaps, but in consistency under pressure, lap after lap within thousandths, tyre degradation curves flatter than competitors, error rates nearly non-existent. That's insane. Especially in an era where cars are heavier, tyres more fragile, and margins brutally tight. So the real story isn't domination. It's control, and control like this doesn't come from talent alone. It comes from a feedback loop between driver confidence, car balance, and team trust that very few champions ever achieve. Think about it. How many world champions looked untouchable until the car changed? Many. But Verstappen's edge seems portable, adaptable, almost independent of circumstance. That's what terrifies rivals most. Smart fans subscribe. Because understanding this isn't just about one driver, it's about a power structure forming underneath Formula One's surface. Teams aren't only chasing aerodynamic upgrades anymore. They're chasing drivability windows that allow Verstappen-style inputs. Subtle, hidden, political. And here's what nobody is talking about. If only one driver can truly exploit the fastest concept, is it actually the fastest car, or just the perfect match? Read that again. This is where tension begins to rise. Because dominance creates pressure, not only on rivals, but inside the champion's own environment. Expectations climb. Development paths narrow. Every weakness becomes magnified, and history shows something brutal. The higher the peak, the steeper the fall. So the uncomfortable question emerges: is Verstappen redefining Formula One permanently, or building a system that collapses the moment conditions change? Be honest, who's actually panicking right now? Engineers across the paddock study throttle traces, steering inputs, micro-corrections invisible to casual viewers. They see a driver operating closer to the limit for longer durations without triggering instability. That shouldn't be sustainable, yet Verstappen makes it routine. And routine excellence is the most dangerous weapon in elite sport, because rivals stop believing they can win. Once belief disappears, performance follows. But pressure always finds a way in. Regulation changes loom. Team dynamics evolve. Political currents shift behind closed doors. And the deeper truth of Formula One is this: domination never ends peacefully. Something always interrupts it. The only mystery is when. Midway through this story, another layer appears. Because Verstappen's style isn't just aggressive, it's efficient. Minimal steering correction. Optimal tyre temperature management. Energy deployment synchronized with race rhythm rather than single-lap heroics. That level of integration suggests something bigger than instinct. It suggests understanding. And understanding is harder to beat than speed. Elite timing, subscribe. Now the debate becomes unavoidable. Was this dominance inevitable or engineered? Because if the system around Verstappen created the perfect environment, rivals can copy it. But if the difference is truly personal, embedded in perception, reaction time, and decision-making under stress, then Formula One faces a far more uncomfortable reality. Some advantages cannot be designed, only lived. Was that genius or inevitability? Here's where Act 1 quietly transforms into something darker, because every era-defining driver eventually meets resistance. Technical, political, psychological, and the early signals of resistance are already forming. Subtle shifts in competition strength, whispers about future regulations, rivals studying long-term strategy instead of short-term wins. That doesn't happen unless the threat feels existential. And this is the cliffhanger nobody can escape. If Verstappen's greatest strength is a driving style the sport can't replicate, what happens when Formula One tries to regulate the conditions that make it possible? Because in Part 2, the story stops being about domination and starts being about survival. The moment a driver looks untouchable in Formula One is usually the exact moment vulnerability begins. Not publicly, not obviously, but structurally. And with Verstappen, the hidden pressure isn't coming from rivals chasing lap time, it's coming from a future the sport itself is preparing. Regulation resets, technical convergence, competitive cycles that historically erase even the strongest advantages. That's where the real danger lives. Because dominance built on precision faces a unique threat: narrow margins. If Verstappen's edge depends on extracting perfection from balance, tyre behaviour and confidence, then even tiny regulation changes could shift the entire equation. Not dramatically, just enough. And in Formula One, just enough is everything. Here's what nobody is talking about. The closer a driver operates to the absolute limit, the less room exists when conditions move. That means the very quality making Verstappen unstoppable today could become the factor that makes adaptation hardest tomorrow. That's insane. And historically, it's happened before. Champions who defined eras often struggled when rules changed the driving rhythm. Not because they became slower, but because the reference point disappeared. Muscle memory, visual timing, corner expectation, all subtly rewritten. And rewriting instinct at 300 kilometers per hour is one of the hardest challenges in motorsport. If you were team boss, what would you do today? Protect the system? Or prepare for change before it arrives? Because inside elite teams, that conversation is already happening. Quietly, strategically, long before fans notice anything on track. And that's where Formula One becomes political. Development direction isn't just engineering, it's belief. Commit to the wrong future, and championships vanish before the first race begins. Stay sharp, subscribe. Now the emotional core of this story reveals itself. Verstappen's dominance isn't only about winning, it's about identity. A driver proving total control over the most complex machines in sport. And identity in Formula One is fragile, because performance defines legacy in real time. One season builds mythology, the next can rewrite it. Let that sink in. So the real stakes aren't race victories, they're historical positioning. Will this era be remembered as total control or a peak before transition? That's the tension shaping everything ahead. And here's the twist. The greatest threat to domination isn't always a faster rival. Sometimes it's uncertainty. New regulations level fields, new teammates shift dynamics, new technical leaders reshape philosophies. None of that guarantees defeat, but all of it increases volatility. And volatility is the enemy of control. Is this dominance or the calm before disruption? Because Formula One history shows a pattern almost mathematical in precision. Long dominance, regulatory, reset, competitive chaos, new hierarchy. The cycle repeats across decades, different names, same structure. And right now, the timeline suggests Formula One is approaching another turning point. But here's what makes Verstappen different. His advantage may not be purely technical. It may be cognitive. Decision speed under pressure. Tyre reading by feel rather than data. Confidence sustained across race distance without emotional fluctuation. Those qualities survive regulation change better than aerodynamics ever could. Which leads to the final revelation. Maybe the real question was never whether Verstappen's car advantage would last, but whether his mental advantage can be matched. Read that again. Because if rivals cannot replicate the mindset, then even equal machinery won't equalize results. And that possibility changes everything about Formula One's future competitive order. So what's truly at risk now isn't one championship, it's the shape of the next era. A sport deciding whether dominance remains individual or returns to collective unpredictability. And fans are watching in real time, without realizing the scale of transition unfolding beneath each race weekend. That's why this moment matters more than statistics suggest. Because the difference between untouchable and vulnerable in Formula One is rarely visible when it begins, only when it ends. And until the next regulation era fully arrives, we're living inside the final chapter of a dominant story still being written. The journey continues. Subscribe. Now, one final thought before you go. If Verstappen's real power is a driving philosophy the sport can't easily copy, then the next hidden battle in Formula One won't be about speed at all. It will be about who learns to think like him first. And that story, the silent shift already forming behind the grid, might decide the next champion long before the season finale. Watch the next video on your screen now, because the future of Formula One is changing faster than anyone expected.